This is day 5 of Bales and Buzzers. Hello and welcome to the show. As the dust begins to settle on Ireland's win in Nelson on Sunday night, we're joined on the line by Kyle McCallan. Also, we'll have a look ahead to tomorrow night's game and have a quick look back at last night's game between Afghanistan and Bangladesh. Johnny?
Yeah, interesting game. Still going on there. I'm just having a look at the scorecard there for Bangladesh. Oh, and by the way, we got a little bit of trouble with the Scots there. Did you see?
Banging on our door
last night, saying that I mentioned Matt Machen's name wrong. I called him Matt Machin, which of course is a Celt name. I mean, it's pretty close, so I won't make that mistake again. But I actually picked off an Indian player who played in the 70s when I started following cricket, known as Venkat. And one of my great party pieces was to be able to pronounce his name fully, which actually was Srinivasagavan Venkatragavan. Here you go.
That's a bit of a mouthful,
isn't it? Yeah, so that sort of helps me with looking. I see that Bangladesh got 267, Adamul Haq 29, also runs there Shakib Al Hassan. Does that sound right?
Very good pronunciation.
I'm working on it, yeah. And also we have Mushfiqur Rahim.
Yeah,
we're getting there, yeah. No, I think I mean, at this stage, I think Bangladesh have it pretty much. It's 140 for 7. Afghanistan, I think it's pretty much. But I mean, it's great to see Afghanistan in the World Cup, you know, I mean, because they've come from, you know, very humble beginnings in cricket, and really it's great to see them.
Yeah, just interesting to see the ICC Chief Executive Dave Richardson, as many of the Irish will know, is quite, you know, he's voiced his opinion against the Associates being in the World Cup. But yesterday he said in an interview that Afghanistan, now that Ireland have won and they've taken this tournament by storm, Afghanistan, Scotland and UAE, the other 3 associates, are now under immense pressure to do the same in this tournament and really apply themselves and make an impression. I don't think that's really, you know, for the head of the governing body of this game to be going out and saying that these 3 sides, with Afghanistan playing in their first World Cup, as are UAE, and Scotland playing in their first in 2003, to be putting them under that sort of pressure, just it shows you how uneven the balance of power is at the ICC and how wrong.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I think, and I mean, it'll be interesting when we're chatting with Kyle McCallan later on what his thoughts are on it. But you know, but it is great to see the associate nations really starting to develop. I mean, obviously we're a prime example, so yeah, I think it's very interesting. So we've another big game tonight with the UAE, another associate nation tonight.
Just on that, Michael Holding, the former West Indian, he was commentating actually for during Ireland's game, said immediately after Ireland's win on Monday that Ireland should be granted immediate test status by the ICC. Now, some will argue that that's not the way forward. You know, we want more. We want full member status. We don't just want to be playing, you know, tests. But it's interesting that all these former greats are coming out to support Ireland's cause. We had Jason Gillespie, the former Australian test bowler, before Christmas, and now we have Michael Holding, and there's many more. But these are iconic cricketing figures voicing their opinion for Ireland, backing them in the public domain, which is it just shows you the level of support.
You just wonder what it's going to take when you see that those players who did play at the top level of the game, and then seeing the way we've been playing. Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think there has to be some changes made. I don't know how, but I don't think it's quite been worked out yet. But I mean, I do think that we're ready.
Yeah. Just before we speak to Kyle McCallan on the phone, there's an interesting tweet just to sum up I think how everyone's feeling at the moment from Ed Joyce yesterday. He said, in response to that Michael Holding interview, personally think any country should be allowed to play test matches if they feel it's a worthwhile pursuit. Why should there be, and in inverted commas he says, test status? And it's a very valid point. Why, in no other sport, is there a status around a game between 2 countries? You know, Ireland play Oman in football. It's not ranked as a second-tier match or a third-tier match. It's just an international match. why in cricket do we have to have this, ranking level and level of status? It's a good point.
It is a very good point, and to be continued. But I mean, I think certainly our win on Monday night is ever helping us in whatever changes need to be made in order to get to where we want to get to.
Yeah, very interesting indeed, and I suppose it will come up more as the tournament progresses, especially if Ireland can really continue where they left off against the West Indies. All right, now in the show we're joined on the phone by Kyle McCallan.
Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. I met you, Kyle, back in 2008 when you gave Pembroke a hammering in Sydney Parade when you were playing for Waringstown. You're very welcome this morning.
Good to be with you. Fun times, fun memories.
Yeah, Kyle, the dust is beginning to settle now on that Irish victory on Sunday night. Just give us your thoughts on the overall game and how you felt Ireland performed.
Obviously at half time in the game, I kind of felt that we'd maybe let West Indies off the hook a little. I did say that it would be better to wait and judge the performance after both teams had batted. It certainly looked like it was a very good wicket and relatively small boundaries. But from my point of view, it's been our most important or our most impressive display in a World Cup in terms of the overall contribution of a team. Against Pakistan in 07, Niall O'Brien scored 70 out of the 120 odd that we were chasing. Against England, Kevin O'Brien scored the fastest 100 we ever had to kind of win these games on their own. Nobody really remembers Alex Cusack's fine contribution in that particular game, but this time we were never in any doubt. After 10 overs, I thought we were winning this. So it was just the sheer nature of the run chase, and I read a wee article that Niall O'Brien wrote about the game, and he started by saying everyone always knew we had the will. Now they know we have the skill, and I thought that sort of rounded off the thing perfectly.
Yeah, because I mean it was an interesting idea to pick Andy Bryan ahead of Craig Gunn, particularly when the wicket looked very good even from the start.
Yeah, I have to say I was a wee bit sort of taken by that, particularly when in the studio at Sky we hadn't been given the teams, and when Ireland won the toss I was pleased that we had decided to bowl first. When we then found out Andy McBride was in the side, I thought it was a strange decision to bowl first given the fact that we were sort of heavily loaded with spinners. But, who was I to doubt William Porterfield and Phil Simmons? Their judgment of it was magnificent. Andy McBride bowled and fielded brilliantly for a young lad in his first 50 over World Cup, bowling to Chris Gayle in the power play, and the bowler maiden set the tone. And yes, our spinners bowled brilliantly. I think we're still a little light somehow in the seam bowling department. I think it puts a lot of pressure on our medium pacers, particularly when John Mooney pulled up with what seemed cramp in his hamstring. But we stuck at it manfully, and of course we proved in the end that 300 was below par.
Yeah, and just on Sky, Carl, obviously you were on duty there. What's it like in the studio there? Obviously, because it's from an Irish perspective, is it difficult to be objective while you're on live? Yes,
I have obviously got a tremendous love for Irish cricket, and I will do everything that I can to I suppose objectively push our cause, but it just makes it so much easier whenever the guys play such quality cricket. Clearly we have a huge axe to grind. The ICC are treating associates with contempt, really, and it just seems that every time Irish cricket do what they ask us to do, they put a further hurdle in our way. How on earth that they can decide before this tournament even starts that the format's not right? It beggars belief, really, and I seriously hope that we do achieve what the boys have set out to achieve, which is to reach the knockout stages, and again pour scorn on clearly what is a biased organisation, which is really founded on self-interest.
Yeah, and look, Carl, the players have been quite vocal in their stance against the ICC and in the media commitments up until the World Cup and even after the win. What's the view like in Sky and maybe over in England in general of Irish cricket and the way that we're going at the moment?
Yeah, well, certainly there's a huge degree of admiration. I think they would agree with the players that it's no longer a shock. I think they would agree with the players that we aren't really minnows anymore. They played, funny in their lead-in, they played about, the term giant killers and the fact that giant killers are supposed to be apparently inferior opposition. I think there's sympathy within the studio for the Irish cause and the fact that they do see the significant progress that has been made both on and off the field from 2007. And the ICC are saying that the World Cups shouldn't be significant. Well, they've played a significant role in taking Irish cricket forward. The only thing, I suppose, that obviously the guys are English, they're coming from an English background, and the ECB obviously have a vested interest in how much progress Ireland and Irish cricket make. The fact that we still have two of our own not eligible to play for Ireland because they've chosen the English route is a huge another barrier in the way of progress. But I suppose from their point of view, the ECB want to maintain the status quo in the sense that they get the best of both worlds now.
Yeah, and Carl, just on the ECB in England, obviously Eoin Morgan is captain in England this tournament. What do you make? You played with him in 2007 World Cup and quite a bit for Ireland. What do you make of his form at the moment? Obviously there's quite a bit of pressure on him now.
Yeah, I have to say, it hasn't gone past me in the studio thinking if Eoin Morgan was playing on the Irish side, he would currently be excelling. He is a world-class cricketer, we all know that. We saw it only recently with 100 in Australia. I just think that the environment that the English cricket team live in, that it's not good in terms of getting the best out of their players. The way the media they generally build them up and then like to knock them down. And from my point of view, I'm quite sure. I think we were looking at it in the studio there. Since the last World Cup in 2011 in India, there's only the 11 that played against West Indies. There's only 3 that weren't in India, whereas there were only 3 Englishmen in the squad that were in India. So the flux and the change in their camp compared to the stability that exists in the Irish camp, basically down to resources, isn't it? We don't have the player pool that they have, and therefore you've nearly a forced stability. But I've no doubt that if Eoin Morgan was playing for Ireland, he would be exhibiting a completely different brand of confidence than he currently is under the significant pressure he's under in the English camp.
And it's interesting now, just coming back to the rest of our games in this pool, Kyle, because we've got some interesting games coming up over the next few weeks. Do you think there'll be any changes in the side, against UAE or against South Africa in the coming weeks?
It's hard to know. I think it might well depend on conditions. Obviously, we've moved to Brisbane now to play the UAE. Craig Young might well come into contention and maybe in the quicker bouncier wickets in Australia. But certainly there'll not be change for change's sake. Phil Simmons and Porty have always been believers in consistency and selection, and I suppose it'd be difficult to change a winning formula, but there's no doubt about it, reading what I'm reading in the press and hearing what I'm hearing, that the win against the West Indies was just the first rung on the ladder. And I think I suppose the nervousness around then approaching a UAE game would be that we somehow go into that game with our foot less on the throttle than we would have had. But I don't think they'll allow that to happen.
Yeah, and Carl, we've set us up brilliantly for the coming weeks to come. But when you put on the green jersey for the first time a few years ago, did you honestly believe that Irish cricket would get to the stage that we're at now? No, that would be the honest truth. When I started, we played Wales in a 2-day friendly match in Rathmines in front of 2 men and a dog. We played 4 or 5 games a season, one of which was against county opposition, who were deemed to be so, you basically played to try and be able to tell your mates who you played against, and winning was out of the question. So from the sea change, I read an interesting piece somebody put on Twitter to say that in the 1980s, when we started playing the game, the West Indies were the most feared team in the world, and Ireland could struggle to beat minor counties. And now all of a sudden, how the seas have changed. But from my point of view, when Eddie Burrell came along, and even prior to that, Mike Hendrick started to change and shift attitudes, and it's just such a huge pleasure to see how far the current squad have taken the game. I think in 2007 we rocked the world a wee bit, but people thought perhaps it was a one generation team. I think that has been proven wrong. I think people turned around and tried to imply that, Andre Botha, Langford Smith, Trent Johnson, Jeremy Bray, with quite a significant overseas influence, which was crucial at that stage. But all bar one of the guys that played against the West Indies were homegrown and Irish born and bred. So, a lot of the things that people are coming up with to begrudge or belittle Irish achievements over the last 10 or 12 years have been put to bed. Now that we've taken this tournament by storm in the first match, Carl, how far can this Irish team go in 2015?
I honestly, would be reluctant to labour and say if we can get, if we get to a knockout stage, you just don't know with this squad. I don't want to also take getting the knockout stages for granted, simply because Zimbabwe impressed me in their game against South Africa, and they seem to have made significant progress. So that's not going to be an easy game. Pakistan is another one that I think is well within our grasp of winning. But I would love to see us just compete. If we're competitive in all games, I'm confident we'll certainly reach the quarterfinals, and you never know, wouldn't it be magnificent if we shocked somebody and got to the semi-final of the World Cup?
Yeah, I think, because I remember going to the games in the 1980s when Ireland played the West Indies, even back as far as the 70s, and it was always an opportunity for the Irish supporters to see an exhibition match, and that's not even 40 years ago, it's only 30 years ago. So it's been a fantastic development. Over the next 4 to 5 years, what ways would you see Irish cricket developing?
Well, certainly if everything goes to plan, Irish cricket have set out a blueprint for being a test nation by 2020. Unfortunately, the ICC appear hell-bent on preventing that. But I just think the weight of performances, and if we continue to do what we're doing, I read Michael Holding in the papers yesterday saying we need to be given test status immediately. There seems to be a bit of a sea change, and there seems to be a lot of fondness for Irish cricket and what's being done in the media, and you never know. I would hope that in 4 and 5 years' time we'll no longer have to be worrying about qualifying for these major tournaments, and perhaps we could be playing some form of test cricket, whether it be a second division type test cricket or not, I don't know. But the bottom line is, if the ICC are serious about funding us and taking us forward, they've got to give us equal funding that they give Bangladesh and Zimbabwe, and I think they'll get a much more significant return on their investment than they're currently getting from those two.
Yeah, and Kyle, just looking back to the next few weeks, are you on Sky duty now for the next 5 games? Yes, I'm covering all the games, enjoying it immensely. I'm also doing the England game in Malahide, which I'm looking forward to again, and so it's lovely to be a part of it.
Kyle, thank you very much for your insight today. It's really interesting to hear your thoughts on where Irish cricket and particularly this current squad are going. So we look forward to hearing you on Sky, and I know that the viewers will be hanging on your every word during the rest of the World Cup. Thank you for your time this morning, Kyle.
Pleasure, guys.
Thanks, Kyle. Alright, and as you'll know, Twitter and Facebook there's been a lot of hype over the last few days after that Ireland win, and a lot of people around the world getting behind the Irish team. But just some speculation on Twitter this morning, coming from the Belfast Telegraph. They're reporting that Phil Simmons has been lined up as the next head coach of the West Indies. Now, obviously, Johnny, he's been linked with a lot of jobs during his 7-year tenure as Irish coach, given the success he's achieved. But would this be, at this particular moment in time, with maybe, Test cricket on the horizon and further opportunities for him, would this be a big blow?
That's very easy speculation. I mean, he's from the West Indies.
Yeah.
To coach your own country that's a test nation, obviously that's going to be speculation. I can tell you one thing. He's not thinking about that at the moment. He's one thing in his mind, and that's the World Cup.
Yeah. It'd be interesting because obviously he's been linked, as we said, he's been linked heavily with a lot of teams before, but he's really taken Ireland to the next level. But maybe, with all respect to his achievements and the knowledge and the coaching capacity he's brought, maybe in a few months' time it might be time for change. We just never know. Obviously,
you never know. I mean, he has brought us a long, long way in the last 7 years.
Yeah.
I mean, as A.D. Burrell did prior to that, as Kyle was saying earlier on. But I think you can speculate and speculate. I think speculate after the World Cup is over. But
one thing is for sure, no matter what, Phil Simmons' future, Cricket Ireland, I'm sure, has a plan in place regardless of what happens. Just looking at Twitter again, obviously there's been a lot of optimism over the last few days following Ireland's win, and there's been plenty of interest from all over the world. Just a couple of tweets that caught our attention this morning, one from India and I think one from Bangladesh. Ireland, they really think that they can go all the way, maybe win this tournament, get to the final, who knows. But realistically, are we, is that
okay? I'll put it to you 2 ways. Well, 1 way, but 2 times. Would you have thought in 2011 that it would have been realistic? Would you have thought about it in 2007 that it would have been realistic? Compared to 2015. Now, there's a greater sense of realism now than there would have been. I mean, it's still, you've got some very big teams, and I think we're progressing very well as a country.
I think just the first objective: win next week against UAE. Take each step as it comes, and if we get to the quarterfinals, brilliant. If we don't, look, it's another step in the right direction. But I think we just have to take one step at a time.
Yeah, and with the players we have coming through in Ireland, it's,
Exactly, and as always, we love to hear from you, especially on Twitter, #Bales and Buzzers or @The Slog Sweep. You can also get in touch on Facebook if that's your fancy, facebook.com/The Slog Sweep, or also on our website, theslogsweep.com, so remember to check that out. That's all for today's show. It's been another great show. We'll join you tomorrow for more of the same.